Look, I'm not gray hair. We're talking about a woman who has been with her husband longer than my mama has been on this.
Okay, can you guys hear me? I've been setting up a new camera and system and everything, and I don't know any other way to try it out than to just go live. So that's what I'm doing here. Oh, good. Good. That is fantastic. First time doing this on a computer. Not really sure what I'm doing here. So this is kind of a test run. Give me 2 minutes. Not 2 minutes. Give me a couple of seconds. I got to grab something. All right, sorry about that. So how is everyone doing today? Hoping for some good news. I am about to writing out the stress. Hoping for a good game. Who are you pulling for? Put in the comments section who you're pulling for. We got Philly fans and KC fans here, I'm sure. I'm kind of rooting for Philly. Like to see some different win it. You know what I mean? Nothing against Kansas City. I want to see history and to see a three-peat. I understand that. Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback. And, he's going to win. He's going to win Super Bowls. That's what he does. Oh, man. How are you guys doing? I got multiple lives going on here. Taking questions. Thank you, Retro. Hi, Jeff. How are you? I had a question. Let me look here. about LNG for Japan. Canada, I believe, is currently exporting LNG to Japan, but I am curious how much the newish pipeline in Alaska may affect that. If I can read this whole. So yeah, the whole U.S. Japan LNG thing, that whole thing is it's BS. That's something that's been going on for a while. There is no joint venture or contract between the United States and Japan. That's not a thing. It's private companies working with each other. And whenever a pipeline is built or an LNG export terminal or anything like that, part of the planning phase is to secure contracts. And those companies want contracts 10, 20 years out. And they don't even begin work until they have contracts in place. Because that's how it works. And also contracts, drive investment dollars into the project as well. So, but there's a lot of places to sell LNG. We don't have to focus on Japan. It's not about Japan. It's, David Revels. Yes, I am. Can we export the abundance of ignorance in this country? I don't think we can. I don't think. I mean, I don't think so. Maybe ignorance does seem to spread like a virus. So anything's possible. Do oil producers want sanctions on Russia to be permanent? No, what they want, they don't necessarily want the sanctions to be permanent. They want our allies to completely move away from Russia for energy, and that's what they're doing. Europe is largely doing it, and so this whole thing with Ukraine, this is going to, if it's not the conflict itself in Ukraine, and the reason I use the word conflict and not the other word is because I'm over here on TikTok as well, and they like to censor people. The repercussions of this conflict are not going to be felt by the results of the conflict. It's going to be felt by decades of the global economy cutting Russia off. That's ultimately what's going to be does the most harm to Russia, is not having customers to buy their products. White House press pass. I have applied for it. I can assure you I'm not going to get it. No, that's not a thing. We've got over 300 on the live on TikTok. We've got about 100 here on YouTube. What to look for. Okay, Jill, got you. I've seen lots of folks on several platforms boycotting the Super Bowl. What's that about? I've been pipelining for 6 years. I have OSHA 30, OSHA 510. I'm scheduled for API 1169 is my company hiring. Not at the moment. And I'm not I'm not really involved in the hiring at my company. Yeah, I have people that do that for me. Hello, Evan, Rio Frio, Eric Flowers, Justin. Hello, everyone. Hey, Reese's, how are you? Thank you so much. Getting a lot of likes over here on the TikTok live. Here to answer questions. People are boycotting the Super Bowl because Trump will be there. Do what you got to do, man. I mean, hey, Jill. Amanda's in my live on TikTok. She wants Chipotle. Can somebody get Amanda Chipotle? I have to watch the Super Bowl regardless who is there. Absolutely. What do you think of Danielle Smith's moratorium on renewables? I think it's ignorant, honestly. Moratoriums on any kind of energy, whether it's fossil fuel energy or renewable energy, it's more political. It's not about, when you're doing that, you're not concerned about meeting the needs of the people. You're concerned about politics. And, do you really think the government will stop the orange guy, or is he just going to ignore all the judge's order? We'll see. Do we still get tar sands from Canada? Absolutely, every day, over 4 million barrels a day. Thoughts on ExxonMobil's rebuke on climate? I haven't seen that. Exxon is typically, I have not seen that. I know that when Donald Trump was pulled out of the Paris Accords in his prior administration, Exxon immediately came out and said they were staying in, and they did it this time too. So I'm not. I either missed what you're talking about, or why do people say both sides are the same? Do you think they mean culturally or economically? When I say both sides are the same, I'm talking about the fact that they both lie. And some of the lies are just ridiculous, and some of the lies are better lies because they're shrouded in decorum and proper behavior. And so a lot of times you don't see lies from politicians that don't appear to be blatantly lying, but they all fucking just lie like crazy. That doesn't mean they're the same in their values and beliefs and all that. It just means that look, here's the thing. I've said this a million times and I will say it forever. If you lie to me, you disrespect me. If you disrespect me, I can't support you. If you don't have enough basic respect for me to tell me the truth, then I have no interest in supporting you in any way whatsoever. So it's just, we can't get back to even from either party having just a basic normal amount of honesty with their constituents. That it's not a thing that we can apparently achieve anymore. So, how high will gas prices rise during the spring and summer months? Probably on a national average for regular, probably around the $3.50 range, barring an economic collapse or some crazy stuff happening. Probably around 350. So I'd expect it to go up about 40 cents a gallon. What happens if Canada reduces output by 1 to 2 million barrels a day? That's a big deal. Yeah, that's a big deal. You're looking at probably a 20% jump in oil prices. And you could see gasoline, over $4 a gallon on a national average. Yeah. Was it funny to you when you said Canada said they would specifically pull imports from red states? No, I didn't find it funny. I didn't believe it. But I have a friend who says Biden had nothing to do with the LNG deal in Alaska. Well, I mean, he didn't really, other than he approved it. I mean, he approved it, beyond that, neither Joe Biden nor Donald Trump had anything to do with the deal itself. Those are deals that are made by private companies. The prime minister of Japan is not going to go back to Japan and tell the private companies in his country that he has to buy gas from the United States. That's not a thing. So, please tell me in a language a motorman can understand. How is the Waha hub spot price works? It works just like any other exchange. Do producers push gas to Waha when the spot price is negative? They have to. They have to, because they have to get rid of it. But for people that don't know, there's multiple exchanges around the country where natural gas is sent. And so the prices for natural gas at like Waha here, or say Henry Hub, can be vastly different because of the amount of gas that's going to that particular region. So thank you for the question. Trump promised half price gas. That's not a thing. That's not going to happen. No, that's. Yeah, Trump promised half price gas. Chiefs or Eagles? I'm rooting for the Chiefs, or I mean the Eagles. Will Iran agree to a nuclear deal? I don't think so. I don't think. I don't think any Middle Eastern country is going to agree with deals regarding Donald Trump because of his last administration and all the things that occurred then. He did not uphold his end of the bargain on deals that he made with them, and I don't think that they're going to be interested. The Eagles. Yes, the Eagles. The Eagles is who we're going for. Thank you. Thank you for the gifts. YouTube, let's like the live, get some engagement going. We got 15 people on YouTube, a little 400 on TikTok. Is there Mr. Global not a thing merchandise? Not yet. Not yet. Are we in a constitutional crisis? I don't think so. Wow, Cass, or no, BP. $14 super chat. Thank you so much. Click on this here. From BP. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Do you have a question? You sent the super chat. You can ask me anything you want. How big is the Prince Rupert Port in BC for LNG? I'm not sure. They haven't. I'd have to look at that. I'm honestly not sure. Most LNG ports, they try to design them to have an input of at least a 500 million cubic feet a day. They really like to have 1 billion. If I was guessing, I'd say the Prince Rupert Port is going to be at least 1 billion. At least 1 billion cubic feet a day. But I'm totally guessing on that. But you're awesome, BP. Thank you so much. Will I be your Secretary of Energy when you become president? I don't know. I don't know who you are. And I'm not much for government work either. Do you have an EV? I have one. I have an EV out in the garage. It's this little police car that my kid used to have when he was smaller, and that's the EV I have. Nothing against EVs. I just don't have one. Russia apparently damaged its own underwater gas line. Do you know who that affects other than Russia? I'd like to know where you heard that. I would be really surprised if Russia blew up their own pipeline. How much would gas be without subsidies to oil companies? So most of the vast majority of subsidies that are called oil company subsidies is actually the heating assistance program where the government helps people pay their got bills that heat their homes. Those subsidies go to people, not to oil companies. I don't think that the tax deductions that you call subsidies on oil and gas would have. I don't think those going away would have a huge impact on gas prices because it's a global market, and globally, even though we're the number one producer, we sit alone in the market. We're not a part of a cartel. We're not a member of OPEC. And so if any production decreases occurred in the US, it would be made up somewhere else. So I don't personally think they would have a huge impact on gas prices. I really don't. Let me look here. With the balance between citizens and oil and gas leases, are we getting a fair shake? So, if you're talking about royalties paid to the United States for production on federal lands, when Joe Biden raised the royalty rate, what he did was he raised it up to the average that a private landowner would get. That's what he raised it up to. It had been the same rate since 1920. It had been the same rate for over 100 years. So he brought it up to where the taxpayers get the same royalty as any private landowner that held the minerals would get. So my response to you is I think it's a fair shake now because the taxpayers are getting what everyone else is getting and not less. Do other Western producing nations belong to any cartels? Well, actually, Mexico is a member of OPEC Plus. Yeah, Mexico is a member of OPEC Plus. You are now on the enemy list of Kash Patel. Well, send them to the house. He don't look like much to me. Pros and cons of nationalizing the oil industry in the United States. The first huge con would just be the cost. That would be the cost. It would be trillions of dollars that we don't have. Unless the government decided to just come in and start seizing everyone's assets. And I don't know, honestly, with the way our politics is in this country, with both sides so deeply divided on energy production, I don't think nationalizing any of it is a good idea because it would change so drastically every 4 or 8 years. And you can't do that with energy. You can't do that with energy infrastructure. You can't do that with energy production. You can't have people in charge of those things that change where the power changes so often and they're so diametrically opposed to what we need to do. So I don't care if you're talking about oil and gas or renewables or any source of energy. I just don't think it's a good thing to nationalize it. Opinion on Elon Musk. Elon Musk is an example of what happens when you have too much money and you're bored. Once you attain a certain amount of wealth, then the only thing you worry about after that is attaining power. and you know, so he needs to go sit in his office and try to get his Tesla stock recovered. Why is Alaska's gas pumped back into the ground? Because they don't have a way to get it to the market. They don't have a way to sell it. And it also helps oil production where the gas is produced. You know, if you pump any type of gas, regardless of what kind it is, back into a reservoir, an oil-bearing reservoir, it will increase the reservoir pressure and help that oil flow back to the surface. So that's what they've been doing with it for a long time at Prudhoe Bay. And it's just because they don't have any way to get it to the market. So not all of it. Do you think oil and gas companies will take advantage of the opportunity to use the newly opened federal lands? No, I don't. They weren't using it before it was closed. But what they will likely do is they will likely try to strategically lease some of it just to prevent anyone else from getting their hands on it and developing it. That's what I see happening. But I don't see any production increases from any of the new acreage that Donald Trump has opened up, because they weren't doing anything there when it was closed, and there's not much interest there in making those investments. So. Are you saying you think Mexico is a cartel? No, I said Mexico is a member of OPEC Plus, and OPEC Plus is a cartel, an oil cartel, and Mexico is a member. And that's not what I'm saying. That's simply a fact. That's simply a fact, a very simple, verifiable fact. Thoughts on Alberta becoming the 51st state? I think that whole thing is just ridiculous, and I don't think it's rooted in any seriousness. I think he's just trying to be condescending. You know, he's being a dick. That's all that is. That's just Donald Trump being a dick. It doesn't. Yeah. Yeah, it's a different kind of cartel. It's not like the cartels you think of when you think of, yeah. Why is there different kinds of oil in the ground? Because hundreds of millions of years ago, the oil was formed under different conditions, different types of plant life, different chemical compositions in the air. The oil was formed under totally different conditions, and so the deeper the oil, the older it is, and the more different the composition, right? So you know, you can drill a well. Let's say you drill a well to 15,000 feet, and You find, there's oil producing at 15,000 feet, and then let's say there's also oil producing at 10,000 feet. Those two reservoirs of oil were formed hundreds of millions of years apart. They weren't all formed at the same time. You're talking about vastly different geologic structures at vastly different elevations. So that's why there's different kinds of oil. What do you think of Trudeau's hot mic comments when he claimed Trump was after Canada's minerals? I mean, we already have access to their minerals, we buy them. So I didn't hear it, so I don't know much about it, but I mean, does pulling oil from the ground leave voids? No, because that oil is trapped inside of very rock. It's not a lake of oil down there. It's rock that has oil trapped inside of it, little hydrocarbon molecules trapped inside of it. And all that rock remains. And it typically, almost always, waters out. So all of the oil, once a well becomes non-viable, that reservoir space is typically just full of more water. So no, there's not significant voids. Now there are cases where you have really shallow wells with high permeability rock that can create a little bit of a void, but that's it doesn't work how you think. And if you create a sort of a sinkhole from a well, it's going to be very shallow. And it's not going to be so much the fluid that's been removed of it. It's going to be from the loss of pressure that exists within the reservoir that will create that. Does the reservoir replenish itself? No, and a lot of people think it does, but it doesn't. What can happen is when a well is shut in for a long time, the reservoir can slowly collect more oil into it, but it's not going to ever be replenished like it was. So you hear people say they went to an old well and it had filled back up. No, that's not a thing. Within the wellbore, it may have filled back up, but not within the reservoir. Not at all within the reservoir. I've seen wells that were shut in for 5 years and go back to them and produce them again, and you get a little additional production for 2 or 3 days. It's called flush production, and then after that, it falls on its ass again. So no, reservoirs do not replenish themselves. Thank you for the question. Is there any oil in the ground that we haven't figured out how to remove? Most of the oil in the ground we haven't figured out how to remove or found. Yeah, you have to think about the vast majority of the oil that we have produced in the world has occurred either on land or near shorelines. So, 99.99% of the oceans are untouched. And yes, we drill offshore, but I'm telling you, 99.99% of the oceans are untouched. And there is vast reservoirs of oil all over the world. And we don't know exactly where it all is. And if we did, we may not know exactly how to get it out of the ground. So there is a the vast majority of oil that was ever created is still here. It's still here. So what we have pulled out of the ground is basically, limits of man. There's a lot left, and the fact that there's a lot left doesn't mean that we can get it, right? When we're done with oil, whenever that day comes, there will be a lot left. Why so many years ago did they pay so much for sandbox and pneumatic trailers, and now they pay so little? Because there's so much competition in the marketplace. There's so much competition in the marketplace that it's driven down prices. That's why. Is anyone going to be responsible for capping old abandoned wells? They leak methane. There's a ton of money was set aside in the Inflation Reduction Act. I can't remember how many billions of dollars it was to cap old orphaned wells. So that's a thing that's ongoing. And as years go by, the plugging of oil wells will be a larger and larger part of the industry. If I watch ads that come on during your live and don't skip, does it do you any good? I have no idea. I didn't even know there was ads running. This is the first time I've done this on a computer on YouTube, so. Are you in favor of Elon Musk auditing the Department? I'm not in favor of Elon Musk having any role in our government. Have you been shocked with anything the administration has done so far? I wouldn't say I've been shocked. I mean, they basically told us what they were going to do. Now, I didn't know how much of it to believe. I don't know if shocked is the word I would use. Because we're talking about someone that can't do anything to shock you at this point. You know what I mean? You shouldn't be shocked by anything at this point. A few months ago, you bought a house with all of its contents. At an estate sale. No, we didn't buy it at an estate sale. Did you ever do a follow-up? No, I didn't do a follow-up, but we sold everything. We sold all the contents. We remodeled the house and it's on the market, but no, I haven't done an update on it. And no, I probably won't ever do that again. Other than offshore, aren't the oil fields of the world already known? And new discoveries are within those fields for the most part. For the most part, yeah. Where is the most new drilling taking place? Offshore, deepwater oil sands, traditional wells. Most of the new drilling is taking place in the Permian Basin. The Permian Basin is responsible for 100% of the increases in production, oil production in the United States for the last nearly 10 years. There are basins that we drill in that brings on more production, but across those basins, the decline of the other wells, the new production doesn't offset the decline of the other wells. So 100% of the increases is from the Permian Basin, and 100% of the increases in oil production in the United States since 2016 is being exported. 100% of the oil production increases since 2016, and that's pretty significant. It's millions and millions of barrels of oil is being exported out of the country. %, yes. Agriculture. Do you think Trump's tariffs put into effect would impact crop prices? I'm not an agriculture expert, but I do remember the last time Donald Trump was the president and how much damage he did to the farmers with tariffs. So, I'm just going to spitball here and say, yeah, I think it will have a big impact. We had to bail them out the last time. So, where do you see the capabilities of AI benefiting the oil and gas industry? Probably mostly with two main areas where artificial intelligence is going to benefit the industry the most, and that is automated operations, which means less people, which means less jobs, and also discovering new fields. You can use AI to map out, every basin and every well and how much production has come from every square inch of a basin. And you can use that data to find everything that wasn't captured during development years. So those are the two main things that AI is going to contribute to the oil and gas industry. And then there's a lot more for sure, but thank you for the gifts. Thank you for liking the live. In Alaska, where the LNG facility is planned, I recommend taking that drive from Anchorage. It's stunning. I bet it is. I bet it is. Does the Saudi Arabian government own all the rights to the oil on its land? Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Do you think the Keystone XL pipeline will ever be finished or reran somewhere else? I don't think so, but it's possible. I just don't think so. Let's say they restarted all of that today. That's a massive project. You have tens of thousands of landowners, throughout the Midwest, and every single one of those landowners have to sign agreements to have that pipeline run across their land. That's one thing that's a massive undertaking. Secondly, it'd be held up in courts for years, just like it was last time. And there would be many lawsuits. By the time they got to a point where they could start construction of the pipeline, Donald Trump probably wouldn't be in office. And they run the risk of spending a bunch of money and then a different person coming into the White House and just getting rid of it again. So there's a lot of risk there. So I don't think any company in Canada is going to be super interested in doing that unless the United States can put forth some guarantees like, hey, if you lose your money, we'll pay you back. That's the only way a company in Canada is going to do that. And if the Canadian government decides to do that, they're crazy. If the Canadian government decides to trust the United States to fund that pipeline themselves, they have lost their fucking minds. I'm telling you, that's just crazy. So will there be more jobs in the oil industry with this president? No, there won't be any more. And there will be less, but probably not so much because of who the president is, but because of rising efficiencies and automation within the industry that is shrinking the labor force. The energy industry in the United States, from fossil fuel perspective, the size of the labor force is smaller than it's been in a very, very long time. But that's not due to government policies or regulations or who's in office. That's due to technology and efficiency and all of the things that they're doing to try to do things cheaper and to try to automate things so they don't have to pay people, right? That's why the labor force is going to continue to shrink. Why do ordinary people think oil companies should produce more and earn less money? Because they're super reliant on gasoline every day of their life. They need gas every single day of their life to drive in the United States. It is one of the essential things they need to survive, right? They need it to get to work, to get to the store, to get to school. So they're very sensitive to the price fluctuations of gasoline because they don't have a choice, right? They don't, some people have a choice. People that can afford a choice have a choice, but a lot of people can't afford that choice. So they're very sensitive to gas prices. And oil company shareholders are very sensitive to their profits. And those two things collide. Those two things collide. Fuzzard, will deals with OPEC affect drill baby drill? No. The potential. So the potential for deals with OPEC could affect drill baby drill, but regardless of OPEC, we're not going to drill baby drill. That's not a thing. As soon as Donald Trump got elected, the oil companies came out and said, we're not doing that. Oil companies produce a commodity for profit, and they're not going to change their strategy because a president, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, says so. Yeah, they're not. Not a thing. Thank you so much for the. Yes, I am on YouTube on the same name. And for you guys on TikTok, please go follow me on YouTube. That thing's going to go away. Y'all know that, right? That's going away. So if you have any interest in seeing my content, I'll be on YouTube, and I'll repost all my YouTube content on some other apps where you can see it on there, like Substack, Blue Sky. Hey, Smarty Pants, how are you, sir? Will Donald Trump make another disastrous agreement with the Saudis? Not unless something happens that gives him a ton of leverage, and they're already saying no to everything he's asking and saying they're not going to change their mind. So we'll just have to see. Why did oil companies stay silent until after Donald Trump won election? Because what they really wanted more than anything was the EV mandate to go away. the new EPA emissions that were, I mean, to be met, we're going to create a situation where same name on blue sky, same name on blue sky. That's what they really wanted. That's the one thing they really wanted. And the crazy part about it, with the Supreme Court ruling on Chevron, the Chevron deference ruling, that was going away anyway, regardless of who the president was going to be. That was going away anyway. The Supreme Court had already effectively, with their decision, pretty much gotten rid of Chevron the EV mandate. That was pretty much gone. So that was the one big prize that they wanted, was to not help EV companies. Thank you so much for the education you've given us all over the years. You're welcome. You're welcome. And I will continue to be here and continue to do this. Does Donald Trump know drill baby drill is not a thing? He does. He knows. He knows it's a slogan. But it got people to vote for him. No, landman is not an accurate representation in any way, shape, or form of the oil and gas industry. No, that's not a thing. I guess I should set a live goal over here. We got corn on TikTok. Is Oklahoma getting hurt with the immigration raids? I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything as far as the state of Oklahoma. But Oklahoma has pretty fairly strict immigration law already. You know, if you get in Oklahoma, if you get caught hiring undocumented workers, it's a really big fine. And so that's not to say they're not here working, but as an independent voter, do you like the power Musk has? I don't like the power Musk has, no matter what kind of voter I would be, because there's far too many ways and opportunities for Elon Musk to further enrich himself with what he's doing. You know, regardless of his politics or what you think of him or anything else, that at its core is the problem. Is you have a person that is going to have the ability, the richest person in the world is going to have the ability not only to create a lot of wealth, additional wealth for themselves, but also to harm his competition. That's never a good thing, regardless of their politics. Doesn't matter. Not a good thing. Comment on TikTok. Oklahoma has the strictest laws on immigration, women, and children. I got a comment. Elon is doing this for free and doesn't care about money. To that, I would say, if Elon Musk doesn't care about money, how did he attain $400 billion in wealth? Yeah. Saying Elon is doing this for free is kind of like saying Donald Trump didn't take a salary. Thank you for the gifts. I set a goal over here on TikTok for corn. Corn is my goal. Help me meet my goal. Even people on YouTube are laughing at you, dude. Even the people on YouTube are laughing at you. You're being mocked on another platform where you're not even at. Like, do you understand that? No, it's crazy. It's crazy. I guess first time I've seen that. I reached my goal. Thank you very much, everyone. All right. I've set another goal. Thank you guys so much. Almost 600 people on the clock app. 600 of y'all. Wow. In what ways can Donald Trump make oil companies drill? He can't. He absolutely cannot. That's not a thing. He can't. That's why drill baby drill isn't a thing. Like I don't know anything about cryptocurrency. You're asking the wrong guy, barking up the wrong tree if you're asking me about crypto. Are you in favor of Elon Musk auditing the Department of Energy? I've already answered that question. I'm not in favor of Elon Musk auditing any department. That needs to be done by impartial people. Impartial people who have nothing to gain. That's who need to be doing that. I don't care if it's I don't care who's in office. There needs to be an airtight level of impartiality when it comes to the agencies of the United States. Who is my barber? Myself. I barb myself, and I'm pretty good at it. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I just don't know a lot about cryptocurrency, and I try not to talk about things I don't know a lot about. So sorry I couldn't help. Roman, neither. Yeah, neither. What happens when Trump ignores court orders? I don't know. I don't know what happens when he ignores court orders, but I do know that it hasn't occurred yet, as far as within this administration. But he has done that in the past, with his personal problems. But oh man. Freaking TikTok. Why do I got to solve a puzzle in the middle of my live on TikTok? Have any politicians asked me for advice? I wouldn't say they asked me, but I've reached out to my senators here in my state about gas prices in the past and presented them with some options, plans to reduce gas prices. And actually got a call back from Senator James Lankford, called me and we talked about it, and he liked my plan. And then gas prices started falling and they forgot about it, because we don't fix anything unless we're in the middle of a mess. Like we don't have the ability to be forward thinking and fix things before they happen. We wait till we're in the middle of a disaster and then we try to fix it. Project 2025 said that he will be instructed to ignore the courts. I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe, I guess it does, but I don't know the answer as to what he's going to do. Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. Anything new in Alaska oil wise? No. Well, I mean, Donald Trump has reopened lands, Alaska acreage that Joe Biden had shut down. That's not going to result in anything, but the Alaska LNG project, I think that has a lot of promise. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if I was betting, I would, if I was forced to bet, I would say that it would happen. So I do think the Alaska LNG project definitely has a much better chance of going through than not. So can you explain why, after the Trump OPEC deal in 2020, both Russia and OPEC had record profits in 2021 through 2023? Yeah, because of the OPEC 2020 deal, oil went to $120 a barrel, and natural gas went to nearly 10. And natural gas in Europe was even higher. That deal delivered them those record profits. You know, if you cut your production by 10% and then you triple the price of the item that you produce, it turns out you make an ass load of money. Yeah, you make an ass load of money. And so, additionally, with Donald Trump asking them to increase production, if they increase production and experience, by, let's be honest, it would be like a 1% increase. You would likely see a 30% decrease in prices. They would lose a lot of money. They would sell more product, but they would make a lot less money, and they would actually be hurting themselves. They would lose hundreds of billions of dollars. That's why they're not going to do it. That's why they're not going to do it. The 2018 oil crash cost OPEC roughly $200 billion. And that was, perpetuated by Donald Trump. So they're not, they know what they're doing. Trust me. How can you say you are a globally recognized expert? Because I went through a formal nomination process and literally was nominated and approved to be a globally recognized expert. That's how I can say that. That's not something you make up. Why does Donald Trump ask them? Does he not have advisors? I think he does it for politics, and I think he does it to start negotiations. And I don't think Donald Trump has ever listened to many of his advisors. That's not really a thing. He thinks he's the smartest person on the planet. Why would he listen to anybody else? So, and he promised to drop gas prices in half in the first 6 months of his administration. So he has to at least look like he's trying to do it. Thank you, sarcastic sister. Super Bowl MVP. I'm going with Saquon. Keep in mind, I don't watch a lot of football. I'm a busy person, and I'm not one of those sports guys that has 6 fucking TVs on his wall and watches all the games and throws shit at the screen. I'm not one of those people. That is true, Roman. That is 1,000% true. 1,000%. I like that. The lithium extraction. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I think it was, I did a little bit on lithium extraction, and so yeah, you can extract lithium from produced water, and I know, Jill, that's why I'm helping you. I see you. I see you everywhere. So, especially in East Texas, North Louisiana, Southern Arkansas. A lot of the water that those wells produce have high lithium content, and you can actually extract the lithium out of that water, and so they're actually able to go back to old wells that aren't economically viable for oil and gas anymore, but you can extract the water out of them and put them through a process where you're essentially speeding up the evaporation process of the water. And once you evaporate that water, you're basically left with all the leftovers, and one of those is lithium. And one thing that has hampered that, though, is a large crash in the lithium market and prices for lithium. When companies started doing that, lithium was over $50,000 a ton, I'm not sure where it's at today because I kind of stopped keeping track of it. But basically, we oversupplied the market with lithium and crashed the lithium market. So thank you, Ms. Patterson. What would be the point in building a new refinery in Canada? Well, for your export, you could export refined fuels, or add some upgraders and export Syncrude or your upgraded product. And that's a business decision made by private businesses. But Canada has a shit ton of oil, like they really do, and they could, if they wanted, and if they were willing, they could outproduce the United States. And if they want to outproduce the United States, they're going to need more infrastructure, and that includes refining. And maybe they don't want to, but I'm just saying. Hey, I wanted to bring you up. Guys, do us a favor and gift the mod. She's currently modding on 2 different lives. So help a brother out and gift his moderator. Send her some love. Send her some coins. BP says we may be waking up to it. Yeah. Canada has 3rd largest oil reserve. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Canada has vast oil reserves, and they have increased their production nationally, by quite a bit. But they could do a lot more, so that'll be up to the people of Canada and who they have running the country. So would Trump's Gaza policy impact oil prices? Absolutely. It would really strain relations with the Middle East. I don't know how much, and I haven't really done much research on it because it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So, I don't think Canada is willing to build the infrastructure. Yeah, I don't think so either. Hello, Juju. Welcome back. How long does it take to get a return on a new oil refinery? Well, it takes a really long time, but that's largely dependent on the agreements and contracts that the company gets set up before they build the refinery. Refineries are a lot like pipelines. They have contracts and agreements in place before they spend all that money. And also, refineries are not all the same, and they're not, the refining business, I like to compare it to like the grocery store business. If you look at say a company has 100 grocery stores, there's a percentage of those grocery stores that are the high profit earners, like they just make a shit ton of money. There's other grocery stores that company owns that don't make any money. That's exactly the same way in refining. You can look at a company's portfolio of refineries and see vast differences in the amount of revenue they generate and the amount of profit they earn. So it really depends largely on the geographic location where it's built in regards to pipelines and oil producing basins and all kinds of things. So there's a ton of stuff involved, including competition from other refiners. So that to answer that question, how long is the return on an investment? It could be 10 years. It could be 20 years. Like, it just depends on the refinery and the company. It depends on how integrated they are. There's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of stuff. So Canada has federal elections this year if the Conservative government wins pipelines and resource development. That is from Mr. Smarty Pants, who is an oil and gas guy that comes into my TikTok or YouTube lives. And I agree with that 100%. Could Canada sell to other countries and make money? Absolutely. They're already doing that with the TMX, which is the expanded Trans Mountain Pipeline. I believe that's right at 900,000 barrels a day that they're now exporting to Asia, different countries over there. And with additional pipelines going in either direction, they could, Canada can sell their oil to anybody the United States can if they build the infrastructure. When everyone thinks of Canada, they only think of tar sands oil. Canada produces a significant amount of light oil as well. Like, it's not just all tar sands oil. Like, that's just one piece of it. Canada has a really diverse portfolio of natural resources. And so if they had the infrastructure, they could sell to pretty much anybody we could. That is correct. CLS, Canadian Light Sweet. How much does Ukraine hitting Russia's refineries and oil storage affect the market and global supply? Like, it's keeping oil prices elevated a little bit right now, not a lot, and it's impossible to say how much, but you could easily make the argument that oil would be a few dollars a barrel cheaper if that wasn't happening. It wouldn't necessarily, it would be more of a theoretical argument, but because a lot of that is occurring within the market, it's more of a psychological factor than a supply demand factor thing. So you could easily make that argument that if Ukraine had never touched anything in Russia regarding refining capacity or storage facilities, you could easily make the argument that oil would be $65 or $61 or $66 and not $70. So is it profitable to extract oil with a lot of sulfur? Yeah. People do it every day. So the cost has to be right. The production has to be right. How much do you produce? What does it cost you to produce it? But yeah, there's a ton of sour oil in the world that gets produced every day, very profitably. So what is your sense on the Alaska LNG pipeline actually being constructed and completed? Have the pipeline rights actually been secured, for instance? That is a great question, because along that pipeline route, one thing I haven't looked into, for all I know, like, I don't know how much of that land along that route is either state or federal land. I know it's both. I don't know if any of it is privately held along that route. That's one thing I haven't looked at yet. If none of that land is privately held, and I'm sure some of it is, then that makes a difference. You know what I mean? So I haven't dug that deep into it where I've actually looked at the land and the route and seen, who controls it. So um, at what point do Permian drillers get nervous? So I did a video on this a while back about the decline rates of the Permian Basin. And as decline rates, or not decline rates, just the overall, the basin is declining. The EURs is what is declining. And EUR is estimated ultimate recovery. It's the total amount of hydrocarbons that they believe a well will produce over its life. Those numbers are dropping, and when those numbers drop, break-even costs go up. So, Smarty Pants, I think that number is actually higher than 60. It was 60 in the $60 range for most operators for quite a long time. There's other operators there like Chevron in the Permian Basin their break even is crazy low because they bought outright most of their minerals, so they don't have huge royalties to pay. And so Chevron in the Permian Basin has really low break-even prices. I think they have the lowest, somewhere between $20 and $30 a barrel. At one time, it was 20. But that's not the case with 99% of the operators in the Permian. So I would actually say it's probably like closer to 65 now, where they start getting a little bit nervous. And that is because it's a fairly new thing. The wells are declining a little bit faster on average across the basin. So, of course, there's companies that exist within sweet spots where they have, just really fantastic production. So obviously those areas have lower break-even, prices. But when I talk about the basin, I talk about the average across the entire basin and not particular areas. Energy Information Administration has predicted that proven reserves in the Permian Basin still hold 5 billion barrels. That's fine, but that doesn't change the EURs on the wells. So, the EURs is what we're seeing with well production on average across the basin, and they're dropping, right? And those proven reserve numbers are constantly changing. When I say the Permian is in decline, that doesn't mean it's going away. The reason I point out the Permian is in decline is because once a basin goes into decline, then the break-even prices start to slowly climb, right? And these are things that happen over periods of years. Like this isn't, the Permian Basin is not going to be out of oil in 5 years. That's not a thing. But what is going to be a thing is and we're already seeing it, is those break-even prices will slowly rise. And what that means is during times where oil prices are depressed, there's going to be less production in the Permian Basin. That's what that means. Wow, you got a teddy bear, Jill.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry. I had to walk away for a second.
Does the U.S. get a lot of oil from South America? Not a ton. Not a ton. We do get some, but not a ton. Yeah, when you take the average of wells across the Permian Basin and you look at, you know, 12 months into the production phase of the life cycle of the well, and on average across the basin, those wells are producing 200 barrels a day less on average across the basin 1 year into the production phase of the life cycle of the well. That's very significant. That is very significant because that is every single day, right? And that's what I mean by EURs are dropping in the basin. That raises your break-even cost because your break-even cost is directly tied to how much oil your well produces. It is, you know, if you drill a $10 million well that doesn't produce a drop of oil, you just lost $10 million. If you drill a $10 million well that produces $10 million worth of oil, you just lost probably $6 million, right? Because you have to pay royalties and there's operating costs and all that stuff. So, you know, if you spend $10 million on a well, you really produce at least somewhere between $15 and $20 million worth of oil in order for you to make a profit, right? Because that $10 million is just to complete it and get it going. It doesn't include the everyday costs that are incurred to produce that. And it doesn't include the royalties, the taxes, just everything you have to pay. So that's what I mean by it raises the break-even cost. Are you on Substack? I am. I am on Substack. You'll search Mr. Global on Substack and you will find me. On Substack, I have content, like video content, and I also have articles that I write on Substack. I haven't written a ton of them, but I write an article once or twice a month. How much more efficient are we on the oil consumption side, and has there been much effort to use oil and gas more efficiently? So I'm gonna put it to you this way: how much more efficient are we on consumption? So in the last, God, what was that number? I can't remember the timeline. I can't remember if it's 30 years. But anyway, over a period of time, which I believe is about 30 years, over the last 30 years, it may be closer to 20, but over that period of time, we've added 40 million people to the population of the United States. We've added 40 million cars and we've added 20 million homes. That's what we've added to the United States, right? We're still using the same amount of oil. So that is very significant because every single person that is alive and breathing on this planet uses energy, right? So when you've added 40 million people and 20 million homes and 40 million cars, understand something, that is equivalent to the state of California. So in the last somewhere between 20 and 30 years, we have added another entire state of California to our country, but we're still using basically the exact same amount of oil on a daily basis. That's all been done through energy efficiency and all those kind of things. Those little yellow stickers on your appliances, improvements in fuel mileage on vehicles, improvements on home efficiency, better windows, better insulation, better roofs. That's how all of that has been achieved, and mostly through energy efficiency. And a lot of people don't realize, you know, how significant that is. When you add 40 million people and 20 million homes and 40 million cars to a country, yet they still use the same amount of oil and gas. That's very significant. So yes, we're doing pretty good with efficiencies. Is heating oil still a prevalent home heating fuel in the U.S.? I don't know if you'd call it prevalent. Like there's a lot of it in the northern states and the northeast corridor specifically. There's once you get south so far, you don't really see it. You don't really see much of it, but it's still pretty big. Like, still pretty big. Thank you for sharing the live, Sherry. Is it Poliev? Is that the guy's name from Canada? Poliev. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. If he wins the election and wants to refine their oil, do I think it'll happen? I honestly don't know. I really don't. I can say with 100% certainty that there's a better chance of it because we call him PP. Okay. There's definitely a better chance of that happening if he's elected, but that doesn't mean it'll happen. So what caused the Texas electric grid to fail so badly in 2020? So if you're talking about, so its worst failure was actually in February of 2021. That was when it had its massive failure. I think that was, I can't remember the name of that storm, but that's when they had the massive freeze across the state. A lot of oil and gas production was shut in. Oil and gas wells in the state of Texas are not set up to handle extremely cold weather. They're just not, because it's the state of Texas and it rarely freezes in Texas. And so we had this massive storm, very deep freeze. None of the oil and gas is set up to handle really cold temperatures. None of the renewable energy was set up to hold cold or handle cold temperatures either. So the whole fucking energy grid, it all failed badly. And, a lot of people wanted to blame it on renewables. A lot of people wanted to blame it on oil and gas. The fact of the matter is there was problems across the entire energy sector because nothing in the state of Texas is set up to handle Arctic temperatures. And when that happens, they all fail. They all fail. So there's no one thing. There's no one particular source of energy that just caused all those problems. That was an across the board event. That was completely. And also keep in mind that Texas isn't on the grid. They're not on our national grid. And I'm not sure how much that contributed to it, but I do know it contributed to it to a point. Any of the moderators I have, don't mute, just boot. Don't mute, just boot. What are your projections for natural gas for the rest of winter, high or low? I think generally speaking, I don't want to say the rest of the winter because I can't see the prices of natural gas right now are largely driven by the weather, largely, right? And I can't predict the weather for the rest of the winter, but I can say that over the next week, there's going to be a lot of upward pressure on prices. There's going to be cold weather across the country in a lot of places. There's going to be ice. There's going to be snow. That's going to drive how much natural gas we pull out of storage. That's going to cause prices to go up. Beyond a week out, without knowing what the weather's going to do, because it may be, we may get into a pattern at the end of winter where we have an early spring or it's unseasonably warm, then that would put downward pressure on prices. The LNG exports are relatively stable. So that's, we can talk about that. It's easy to see that that's stable. So what's really driving prices right now is the weather. So for the next week, for sure, we're going to have upward pressure on prices. Beyond that, until I see weather forecasts, I have some sense of how cold it's going to be. It's just hard to say. But overall, in the natural gas sector, everything is putting upward pressure on natural gas prices. Everything. Temperature is going to drop like a stone this week in northern Alberta, and it's already stupid cold. Yeah. And that helps natural gas prices in Canada the same way it does in America or the United States. When are the tariffs supposed to start? I don't think they're going to start. I think it was a negotiating thing. He already postponed them for 30 days. I don't think, other than the 10% tariffs on China, which that actually could end up, that is the one thing I forgot about. The 10% tariffs on China could put some downward pressure on gas prices in the United States. Not gasoline, but natural gas. Because the last time we placed a 10% tariff on China, our LNG exports to China went to zero. They went to zero until we lifted that tariff. So unless those exports can be made up elsewhere, we could see a slight dip in LNG exports due to that tariff, which may or may not affect prices. It depends on the 10 other things that affect prices too. Is there a strategic natural gas reserve like oil and gas? Natural gas is already stored underground for the most part. So we don't really need a massive strategic natural gas reserve because it's already stored underground. Mr. Global, will the Japan LNG deal follow through? I think it will, but let's not call it the Japan LNG deal because that's not a thing. That's just something Donald Trump said. It's just the Alaska LNG project. And I'm trying to remember Harvest, the company the main company that's working on that, they will establish contracts with buyers overseas, and that's how all that will be determined. And they probably already have contracts in place. Some may be in Japan, some may not be in Japan. It's whatever they do. The Alaska LNG project has nothing to do with the United States or Japan. It's private companies doing business with each other. So thank you for the question. Everyone, please tap the screen and like the live. Don't forget to gift the moderator right here. She's currently moderating 2 lives, one on TikTok and one on YouTube. She's doing a fantastic job. How deep can a gas well be drilled these days? Pretty deep. Now you have to understand, we're not talking about, well, I guess I could put it either way. So there's two ways we look at depth when we talk about wells. We look at the vertical depth, or the true vertical depth, and then we also look at the total depth, because when you drill a well, let's say you go down 9,000 feet, and then you go sideways, and that is all depth of hole as well. It's just not vertical depth. And now we're drilling 3-mile horizontals. So, you're looking at, if you go down 9, 10, go out 3 miles, 15,000 feet, you're looking at nearly 5 miles of footage. So you're looking at well over 25,000 feet. Now we're actually capable. I don't know how much of that we've proven in a horizontal well, but vertically we're capable of going significantly deeper than 25,000 feet. We are. We just don't do it anymore. But if we wanted to, we could drill until everything melts, and because that's what happens when you get that deep vertically. When you get into 25,000 foot range vertically, the amount of heat that you have downhole, depending on your geology and the hydrocarbons that are trapped in the rock, then you start seeing bottom hole temperatures in excess of 400 degrees, 500 degrees, and but we can easily go to 30. And I can't remember the deepest well that was ever drilled vertically, but I think it was close to 35,000 feet in Russia. And they just couldn't go any deeper because it's so hot with the friction and the bottom hole temperature and everything that was going on, that they were just melting. They were just melting everything they ran in the hole. So yeah, you can go pretty deep. Is that because of lack of airflow to the bit or something else? No, it's mostly due to bottom hole temperatures and friction. You don't really have airflow going to your bit. What you have is a fluid system that, an engineered fluid system that is circulating your cuttings out of the well that you're constantly pumping. And when you get to a certain depth and your bottom hole temperatures reach a certain point, and then you add friction, the temperatures that are created by friction, and then you add the hydrostatic pressure of the fluid column in the well, all of those things create heat. And it's downhole temperatures can become enormous when you get to those depths. Yeah. How much oil is there off the West Coast? A lot. There's a lot of oil off the West Coast, and drilling has been banned off the West Coast for 40 years, but the companies held so many leases when it was banned that they're actually still drilling, but not a lot. Like it's very small amount, but there's a significant amount of oil reserves off the West Coast. Thank you, Lynn. Danny from Nova Scotia, how are you? Please like the live, everyone. Do I have any pets? Yeah, I have a couple of dogs. Thank you, Love to Travel. How are the little birdies? They're no longer with us. That's how they are. Sarah from, I don't have my glasses on. I'll just say Ontario. Hello, Sarah. Yeah, I have a ton of followers in Canada. I have a ton of followers in Canada. Vancouver Island, British Columbia. Yeah, I don't bring up the chickens. You know, you bring up the chickens and we'll have to talk about the dogs again. Yeah. Turns out dogs love chicken too. Yeah. Would you consider the drilling bans a political way to protect big oil from competition? No, I would consider the drilling bans to just be politics. Yeah, it's just politics. You cannot, in all of the acreage, you know, that Joe Biden pulled away available for lease, and all of the drilling bans he instituted, you have to understand those aren't really drilling bans. Those are stopping new leases, right? So they're called drilling bans, but that's not exactly what they are. They're saying we're not going to lease any more acreage out. So he did it all along the East Coast, right? There's no wells on the East Coast. Like, we don't drill off the East Coast. Nobody wants to drill off the East Coast. The western part, offshore Florida, that little section there off the west, there's some old wells there, but we haven't drilled there in decades. West Coast, off like Long Beach in that area. That area is, you know, Southern California. That area has been banned for 40 years. They're still drilling there, and the rest of it, nobody wants to drill there. Like, it's a lot of what Joe Biden did with all of this stuff was political, and it didn't have any teeth, you know. And he comes out and he says he's protecting the environment. It's like, what are you protecting the environment from? Nobody's doing any business there. No one's trying to do any business there. Nobody wants to do any business there. That's, you know. And conversely, you know, when Donald Trump opens up all this acreage, it's political. It's political. We're not going to produce a drop of oil in any place that Donald Trump opened up. It's all politics. And if you're not in the industry and have a good understanding of that, then it seems like your politicians are actually doing something, but they're not. They're just kind of making a statement. Doesn't actually impact production, doesn't impact oil prices, doesn't make gas cheaper or more expensive. It does nothing. It does absolutely nothing. Don't ask Christy Nome for advice on chickens and dogs. Okay. What are we talking about? We're taking questions on energy, oil and gas questions, renewable energy questions, the usual, Mr. Global content. In a previous video, you spoke of Canada taking 99% of their own oil and being at near adequate capacity. So why do they export? Why export? I did not say they take 99% of their oil. Maybe you misunderstood something I was saying. They can refine almost all of their oil. They may, you know, Their refining is good. I think you're talking about the video. I made a video because information about Canada's refining capacity, and it's a lot better than all this misinformation that came from the tariffs. Why do they export? Because importing and exporting is a business within itself. Period. And it's not about need. It's not about where a country needs its gas prices to be. It's not about. It's about profit. It's a standalone industry that is designed and built to make profit. And when we export, it's not the country exporting, it's a company exporting to make profit. And you have to look at imports and exports through a profit lens and not a how much oil do we need in Canada or the United States lens. That is going to go where the profit is, where the money is. Everything goes where the money is, where they can make the most profit, right? So we export a ton of oil out of the United States because that's how they make the most money. You know, and does that put upward pressure on oil prices on WTI, and does that put upward pressure on gas prices in the United States? It absolutely does. But those companies don't exist to lower our gas prices. Those companies exist to make a profit. That's, you know, and so when we think of importing and exporting, that's a standalone business that exists to profit and put money in its shareholders' pockets. And it's not about the needs of any specific people or country. It's about the needs of that company. That's all it's about, right? So that's why they export, because that's where they make the money. If they made more money not exporting as much, that's what they would do, right? Yeah. If they made more money not exporting as much, that is what they would do. Did you all see Kanye West praising the Saudi royal prince on X? I'm not on X, and if I was, I wouldn't look at anything Kanye West said anyway. So I didn't see it. I'm sure others did. Alberta has far more oil than Canada could ever. Alberta has a ton of oil. Yes. Hello, Margarita. How are you? Thank you for saying that. What would happen if Canada shut off power to New York? That would be like an economic collapse. New York is the financial hub center of the United States. That's where the New York Stock Exchange is. If you shut off power to New York, that's not good. I don't think they would ever do it. I don't think there's a chance in hell they would ever do it. But yeah, that would be really bad. That would be really bad if they did that. It would be funny though if they did it for like 10 minutes just to show them, like, hey, see what we can do. Don't forget. I can't see my likes over here. The lights are shining on it. What is that? How many likes do we got on TikTok? 105,000, 106,000, 150 likes on YouTube, and 106,000 on TikTok. Come on, folks. What does this button right here do? Wow, cool. Did not know that was a thing. I've set a goal on YouTube for super chats. I set the cheapest price, $2. How about converting water and hydrogen and oxygen and storing that in tanks instead of batteries? It's very expensive. That's the problem with it. It's very expensive. It takes 2 units of energy to produce 1 unit of energy with hydrogen. So that's the problem with hydrogen. And until they can close the gap on that, on making it profitable, it's never going to be a viable thing until they can make it profitable. That's, Thank you for the gifts. Please gift the moderator as well. TikTok lets you like endlessly. YouTube only allows 1 like. Well, thank you. I did not know that. I did not know that. So we're not doing bad. Which major is doing best in the U.S.? It's almost always Exxon. It's almost always Exxon. They're just the best at what they're just the best. I don't, and thank you very much, Steve Tammy with the super chat. I'm going to like, please, if you have a question, please ask it. Happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you very much, Steve. Yeah, Exxon and yeah, it's not working for me either, Roz. I'm hitting the like and it's not liking. The heart worked, but the like didn't. Exxon is so integrated and has so many efficiencies in place, and they run across every sector of the industry that it's just a machine. Like it is a vast money making machine, and so they always, they all do well, or they wouldn't be majors. But Exxon's just the best, and they've built a foundation of that allows that to happen year in and year out. So. What would happen to the global oil market if nuclear fusion became, I lost the damn question, a safe, cheap energy source? Well, you would still have to convince people to buy EVs, for one. It would probably have, long term, it'd probably have a larger impact on natural gas than it would oil. But it would take some time because it's more than building a new energy source. You also have to change the way the energy is consumed, right? So there's more than one step to that. But it would eventually have a huge impact for sure. But it wouldn't be a quick process. It never is. So. What is your role in the oil and gas industry? I am a partner in a fully integrated upstream oil and gas company. And that is my role. Captain Fantastic, thank you so much. Hit me with the $5. That is awesome. Captain Fantastic. Thank you, brother. Does Landman's Wolfpack shelf really exist? It does, but it's not the Wolf Pack. It's called the Wolf Camp. Yeah, and it does really exist. And you ask oil under solid rock. All oil, well, I shouldn't say all, but almost all oil that exists is under solid rock. It's called a cap rock. And a cap rock is like an impenetrable rock. That means it's impenetrable by what's below it. That keeps the oil trapped where it is and allows the oil to pool in areas, right? So almost all oil that exists, especially in an onshore environment and offshore as well, although we have oil seepages all over the world, exists under a cap rock. That is one of the necessary attributes of the geology that needs to exist to have a lot of oil concentrated in one area. If cap rock wasn't a thing, we wouldn't be able to produce very much oil at all around the world because the oil would be so dispersed throughout all of the geology that you couldn't necessarily drill just one well and produce a ton of oil, right? So cap rock is a very important thing. And it is a thing that does exist. And your cap rock is generally where you will find oil, is where your cap rock creates almost a dome-like structure in the geology. And that dome, think of the Permian Basin as a giant dome, right? Underneath the ground is a giant dome. There's this cap rock, and that all that oil in the Permian Basin is locked in there. Ryan Dubay, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it, brother. He says, I have learned so much from you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, Ryan. Thank you for the $2. Spencer says, I don't miss the Permian Basin one bit. Hey, I don't either. I don't care if I ever go back to the Permian Basin. I honestly don't. I spent a lot of years there. Thank you for the gifts, by the way, and please don't forget to gift the moderator. I bought this hat. Where's the camera? Camera's right there. I bought this hat in, where was I? I think I was in Skagway, Alaska, when I bought this hat right here. We used to look for a drilling break, and that would indicate cap rock formation. Absolutely. Yeah, you got to have cap rock in place. Thank you again, Steve. Howdy from Midland. Been here for 52 years. Wow, that's a long time. But sounds like you're from there. So I didn't like working there. I worked there for a really long time now. It's just the heat of the summers. God, those locations would be so freaking, hell, it might be 140 degrees on your location. That sun shining down on that caliche. Yeah. Lots of good people there. It has nothing to do with the people. It's just the environment. And it takes forever to get anywhere from all the oil field traffic. Dangerous, most dangerous roads in the country. 180 or 285 and 302 are two of the most dangerous highways in the country, and lots of bad stuff going on there with accidents and stuff. So yeah, football and oil for sure. Edmonton, Alberta, here in the oil business for 30 years. You know your stuff. Thank you very much. Spencer Moore, 285. I pray before I drive. Yeah. I just didn't drive on it. I stuck to dirt roads when I was in West Texas. Yeah. I learned all the back roads, and I would leave early, and I would try every way I could to avoid 302 or 285. That's what I did. I don't know how many times I drove through the damn University Lands Ranch, getting one place or another. I always took the back roads, always went the long way, but it's safe. I manufactured the corrugated steel cellars. Cool. Canada's government is again talking about the pipeline to the east now that political climate has changed. They should. They should. I mean, they have a refinery there, and where is that damn refinery? Labrador? What I'm not super familiar with are the sort of geographical issues with running that pipeline eastern Canada. I don't know if there is any, but that's the one thing I'm not super familiar with. That one's in St. John. Yeah, right there on the, I think it's right on the coast, isn't it? St. John? Yes. Okay. I saw your video about the guy, Skyler, losing his farm. I just hope his social media accounts don't help fund his lifestyle afterwards. After he loses it, he would never learn his lesson. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people messaging me, telling me, hey, this guy's a really good guy and, he needs help. And I'm just like, you know, there's a lot of people in this world that need help a lot worse than Skylar. And, I is the energy secretary a reality show star too? No, he's not. Chris Wright is not a reality show star. He started Liberty Frac Services. He's been in the nuclear power business. And I read the energy secretary's sort of order that he put out the other day, and there really wasn't anything specific about it in it regarding the expansion of oil and gas development. There was more about nuclear than oil and gas, and the whole thing was fairly vague. But it did kind of stick out to me that he didn't give any specifics about what he was going to do regarding fossil fuel development, when that's sort of been the whole selling point the whole time. But thank you so much, Kelly, for helping out. My petroleum engineer ex-spouse, still friends, said if you removed all the dirt from Houston, you could walk across the entire town on pipeline. That is true. That is true. And you could also do the same thing in Cushing, Oklahoma. But yes, that is absolutely 100% true. Is the OPEC Plus deal 2.0 coming soon? No, I don't believe so. I don't believe so. Rusty, who I think is someone I've been talking to on Substack. Is that you, Rusty? I think that is. He's had some direct interaction with Chris Wright and says it was very positive. Thank you for that, Rusty. If that's the same Rusty, I'm thinking it is. Have you heard of many fleet trucks going to compressed natural gas? Cummins, was it Cummins? I think Cummins. Yeah, Cummins just came out with a new natural gas engine for semi trucks, big engine, and it's supposed to be the bee's knees. It's supposed to be awesome, and they also signed a deal with. Trying to remember the name of the manufacturer they signed a deal with. Of course, they signed deals with like Freightliner and like the big truck manufacturers, but they just recently signed a deal with someone else too. I'm trying to remember who that was, but yeah, the new natural gas engine that's supposed to basically replace diesels is supposed to be badass. So. Hope you didn't already discuss, but what is this nonsense about exporting U.S. oil to Japan through Alaska? So that's where the confusion lies. It's not oil, it's LNG. It's called the Alaska LNG project. And the idea is to build a pipeline from Prudhoe Bay to the Kenai Peninsula. And stand up a LNG export terminal there alongside a carbon capture plant and start exporting LNG to Asia, not just Japan, but Asia. And yeah, Peterbilt. And so that's the plan. That's been in the works for several years. How much would it cost to build a 500,000 barrel a day refinery? You're probably looking at 4 to 6 billion. It just depends on where it is and how valuable the ground is and how much money you spend on lawyers and litigation. That's always a big thing. Yeah, it is. The railroad I work for is experimenting with running CNG in locomotives. Yeah, I think it's a locomotive manufacturer that Cummins signed a contract with, actually. Yeah. Why is there not a refinery in the West? What West are you talking about? We have quite a few refineries in the Western United States. some of the bigger rigs up here run off natural gas. Yeah. We actually run a lot of stuff off natural gas or electricity that we produce with natural gas powered turbines that we stand up on locations. Wow, David Schmitzy, thank you so much. $20 super chat. Wow, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. You're the man, David. You can ask me whatever you want. $20 super chat from David. David's the man. Public service announcement from Billy Ray Dipshit. Make sure to chew your drinks. I think that's for you, Jill. David said, I just wanted to thank you. I benefit so much from what you do. Well, thank you, David. Thank you. It looks like Zipping Lake knows a little bit about these engines I'm talking about. He says the X15N offers 400 to 500 horsepower and 14 to 1,800 pound-feet of torque. Wow, comparable to the oomph of a diesel with a smaller carbon footprint, according to article. Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely for Jilly. Will natural gas eventually replace coal? It largely has in the U.S. All of the reductions in coal use in the United States have come from natural gas taking its place. Of course, we still use coal, but I do believe eventually natural gas will completely displace coal. But that's not a global thing. They still use an enormous amount of coal in other countries around the world. As a matter of fact, in 2024, globally, we used more coal than any year in history. So just because the United States has greatly reduced its coal consumption doesn't mean the world has. And that was proven in 2024 when we used more coal as on this planet than any other time in history. So and you know, when people talk about climate change and things like that, you know, the things that we are doing towards climate change aren't making a huge difference if the rest of the world isn't doing it too, right? So I'll just leave that at that. But global emissions are still rising, and that's because the growth in energy demand outpaces our ability to build clean energy. It just simply does. So Rusty says he's worked with the tier 4 frac pump engines that start on diesel and shift to natural gas as the load on the pump shift. Yeah. It's Caterpillar. Okay, so it's not Cummins, it's Caterpillar. You may be right. Cummins may have one too. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I just remember reading about it. It was a while back when I read about it. Do we export a lot of coal? We do. We do export coal. We export the majority of the coal that we produce. And we export a lot of it to China. And China uses an ass load of coal. So Um, and what they're doing in China is they're building out renewable energy, and they're standing up coal-fired power plants right next to them as a backup. That's what China's doing. and built a lot of coal-fired plants in just the last few years. They've built a lot. China's built more coal-fired plants in the last few years than the rest of the world combined, just in China. That's how many they've built. I don't remember the exact number, but they've built more in China than every other country in the world combined. Well, please don't forget to like the live and tap on my face, hit me in the face right there if you want to like the live. Please gift the moderator. Thank you very much. China is the leader. Yeah, China is definitely Billy Ray says he cannot talk. He choked on 2 pretzels yesterday. He was doing his George Bush impersonation. Thank you guys so much. I reached my super chat goal on YouTube. I set another one, but thank you guys so much for your donations. How is the price of gasoline calculated? And this is something that a lot of people don't understand, and it makes sense. So gasoline is exactly like oil. It's traded on an exchange. It's traded through contracts on a market. So the free market sets the price of gasoline. And then from there, it goes to the retailer. And from there, they mark it up to whatever they charge. So there is not an oil company determining what the price of gasoline is at some gas station down there on the corner. That's not how it works. Gas is sold on an exchange, on a market, just like a stock, right? The same way oil is bought and sold, and through very large contracts. And so the gasoline is sold on the exchange. It hits the market. It goes out to retailers, and then they mark it up as they need to, to make a profit for their businesses. So, yeah, that's how gas prices, gasoline, and natural gas as well is sold. Mary Brown, $20 super chat. Wow, thank you so much. David started it. I don't know enough to ask a question. Still in the notes taking stage. That's awesome. You're taking notes. Listen, Mary, there's no such thing as a dumb question. So don't be afraid. There's no such thing as a dumb question. If you just don't know something, you don't know it, right? So don't have any fear about that at all. So. I don't know how I did it. I don't know what I did. Did I just send myself a super chat? I was. I'm new to YouTube, folks. I'm new over here. So Mr. Smarty Pants says gas and diesel are their own commodities. Yes, they are. 1,000%. It is. Ruslan says, no such thing as a dumb question. Challenge accepted, and grossly misspelled the word challenge. So thank you for that. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but either way, I like it. Does China still use a lot of diesel-fired electric generation? They do that mostly in more remote areas, but it has reduced. It's been reduced a lot by just exploding growth in coal and renewable energy. But they still use it. Yeah, they still use it. There's still places in the United States that have oil-fired or diesel-fired electric generation as well. Most people don't know that, but there's those old plants got to be freaking 100 years old that still run on that. But there's still quite a few of them around the United States. As a percentage of our electricity generation, it's less than 1%. So it's not like a significant thing, but it's still a thing. So you made a video about natural gas being pumped back down in the ground. So that's what they're doing in Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, because they don't have any way to get it to the market. They don't have any pipelines or any way to sell that gas. So they simply inject it back down into the reservoir. And it helps keep the oil flowing from the wells. That's what I was talking about. And there's a lot of things that you can pump back into the ground to produce more oil. You can use water. There's a lot of water flood work going on. You can use CO2. You can pump all kinds of stuff back into the ground to force the oil out. So. Will hydrogen power ever become sustainable? It's got to become profitable to become sustainable, and it's not. And it's not yet profitable with massive subsidies. So we're a long ways from that. And with the new administration, that I don't know that that's going to help hydrogen either moving forward for the next few years, because they're probably not going to be willing to subsidize that a lot. But there's also a lot that they probably can't do anything about that was passed through the Inflation Reduction Act. So, but hydrogen is a very long way away from becoming sustainable. That doesn't mean it can't, but it's just a long way. How will Trump convince oil companies to drill, baby, drill? He won't. He won't. He won't. The audio on TikTok is better. Well, I'm not using this microphone. I'm actually using the microphone that's on my camera, because when I came in here, I was just doing a test run to see the setup and if it would work. And then it ended up turning into a long dual live. So. What do I predict for crude oil prices in the next couple of months? Probably about the same. If they do anything, they could fall a little bit, but it won't be enough. Like it'll stay within a range. Like there's really nothing currently happening that's moving prices in a big way up or down. So Jill says TikTok is ahead. Okay. So, a couple of months, probably looking about the same, maybe a couple of dollars less. It's not going to move a lot. So, of course, that can change in a heartbeat. Anything happens anywhere in the world, that can change, right? So. Rock was curious about hydrogen due to the investment that Cummins has put into hydrogen engines. Yeah. So what you have to keep in mind is a lot of that investment is subsidized by the government. You know what I mean? Like, you know, Cummins can pour, I don't know how much money they poured into it, but say they poured $1 billion into it, and I'm not saying it's that much. I'm just saying, let's say it was. The government probably paid for most of that. Yeah. Yeah. That's, you know, Cummins isn't using their money to develop a hydrogen engine. They're using our money to do that. That's how that works. Ukraine war doesn't impact price of gas. It does, yeah, but that's not something that's going to change in the next couple of months. The question I was asked was, you know, where do you see oil going in the next couple of months? And I don't see anything changing in Ukraine over the next couple of months. And even if it does, it doesn't mean that sanctions or anything like that imposed against Russia will change. Because if they struck some, you know, grand bargain to end the conflict in Ukraine, there would likely be a fairly significant period of time where those sanctions stayed in place to ensure that agreement held up. Or they may say, you know, we'll partially lift the sanctions, or you know what I mean. But you got to keep in mind, just because Russia's oil is being sanctioned doesn't mean they're not selling it. They're absolutely selling it. They're putting a ton of oil out there on the market, right? They're just selling it at deep discounts to countries who will buy it. So Warner Wild's $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Warner. That is awesome. Thank you. Rusty says, great discussion. Please keep it up. I don't know why it is, but for some reason, I think I've met Rusty. I really do. Can water used for fracking be reused? Absolutely. Yes, it absolutely can. Once again, Warner Wilds, thank you so much for the super chat. Please feel free to ask a question. Please feel free to ask anything you like. We often reuse water for fracking. You know, we just call it a produced water frac. So we take flowback water that we produce out of wells. We put it in big pits. We treat it. We filter it. We do a lot of things to it. We transfer it back to locations and frack other wells with it. So we absolutely reuse water. I think one of the leaders of that in West Texas, I think Pioneer was probably did it more than anybody, but because they were really big into it. When I was with Shell, we did it quite a bit. And I know you know, before Anadarko, you know, when I was there with Shell, we were working with Anadarko and Venture. So we shared acreage and we invested in our wells together and stuff. So Shell was doing it, Anadarko was doing it, Oxy continued to do it after that. I know all the majors were doing it, and I know Concho was doing it. So it's pretty common. It's pretty common. Can it be used for drinking? Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. Not with what we were doing to it. Not with what we were doing to it. Now, you could take that water, and I believe there's a project in Midland going on You could take that water and run it through a treatment plant, and you could actually make it potable again. And I do believe they're working on that at Midland. But what we were doing to it, no, it's not at all potable water with what we were doing to it. We were mostly just cleaning up the hydrocarbons and bacteria out of it before we pumped it back into wells. That's mostly what we were doing to it. We were filtering it, but no, we weren't treating it at a level where you could drink it. And that would be very toxic. You don't want to drink that shit. Where do you see U.S. global oil production realistically being in 5 to 10 years? Which product sectors will keep growing or shrinking? In 5 to 10 years, I think oil production in the United States is probably going to be exactly where it is right now. And it's most likely to be about exactly where it is globally as well. We're going to be producing a little over 100 million barrels a day globally. And it could go up globally by 1 or 2 million barrels a day. A lot of analysts are kind of all over the map on that. Some people think we'll get to 110 million barrels a day of global oil demand. I'm not so sure about that because the rate of growth year over year is shrinking. So global oil demand is still increasing, but like I said, the rate at which is increasing is coming down, right? So I don't know that we'll get to 110. And I think we will get to that peak and fall off of it a little bit within a 10-year period. But when global oil demand starts to decrease, it's going to be a crawl. Like you're not going to see oil fall off a cliff. That's not going to happen. It's going to hit some number, some year, probably largely dependent on the global economy that year. And then it's going to plateau, and then it's going to very slowly decline. And this is decades and decades and decades of decline before we even get back to what we were using 20 years ago. It's going to be a very slow process. And probably the fastest growing product sectors, the petrochemical business, which, that's where we make a lot of our plastics and things like that. The petrochemical business is expected to completely offset loss of refined fuel demand for transportation. Petrochemical business is starting. It's in the very early phase of a long bullish period, sort of a boom, petrochemical boom. So that's going to be a big thing. And then natural gas demand with data centers, artificial intelligence, overall electrification of the world. There's roughly, the number used to be 1 billion. It's come down a little bit, but even just 2 years ago, there was 1 billion people on the planet that didn't even have access to electricity. So it's hard to shrink global demand when that many people don't even have electricity yet and have it coming. It's on the way, right? So electricity itself will be the biggest growing product over the next 10 years, just electricity. And I am calling electricity a product because it is. But regardless of how far we move from either fossil fuels or renewable energy, regardless of the transition, the electrification is going to occur. How we produce that, all of that electricity can be debated till the cows come home. But yeah, electricity will be one of the biggest growing products over the next 10 years, 1,000%, 1,000%. It's natural gas demand is going to be booming. Electricity growth is going to be booming. Power growth is going to be booming. That's going to be a huge thing over the next 10 years. Warner says, great channel, crazy, less than 100 people watching. Glad to have come across you, and I've learned a ton in the last year or two. Warner, I really appreciate that. I think this is my 4th, maybe 5th live on TikTok. So I haven't, YouTube. I haven't spent a great deal of time yet here growing this channel, so I've got earlier I had about 600 on this other stream over here. Annette, $2 super chat. Thank you so much, Annette. Is that Kamano? Scroll up here to get back to your question. I was talking to Warner. What are the biggest objections to fracking? Well, what I see mostly in my interactions is concerns about water and the water table. And then it may be a tie with that and earthquakes, which, you know, earthquakes aren't generally attributed to fracking itself. Earthquakes are more attributed to the injection of the wastewater back into injection wells where we dispose of it, and injection wells that run near fault lines. Because apparently it never occurred to anyone that you shouldn't pump 40,000 barrels of water a day into a fault line. So we had a lot of issues with that here in Oklahoma and Arkansas as well back in the day. And I know that's been increasing somewhat in West Texas. We pretty much solved those problems by just identifying the injection wells that were creating the problems and shutting them down. So thank you so much for the super chat, Annette, and great question. How will the U.S. be affected by Canada shutting off oil? Canada is not going to shut off its oil. No, it's not, because thank you, Annette. Because if they did, you know, we could just get it from somewhere else. It would be a pain in the ass, but we could replace that oil. The companies that exist in Canada are very closely tied with the companies that exist in the United States. So let's say, I don't know, Imperial said, we're not going to send any oil to the United States. They would basically be saying, we're not going to send any oil to ourselves, because they literally buy it from themselves in the United States. Yeah, they're not going to shut off oil. Thanks for the question. I'm having a hard time. Is your name Zeem or Zyme? $2 super chat. Thank you so much. XEIM. I could just call you Escobedo. Is that your last name? Will drilling in the Eagle Ford Shale ramp up? I don't believe so. Drilling is not going to ramp up anywhere. Drilling is not going to ramp up anywhere. It's going to stay rig count's going to stay very stable or even decline a little bit. We can just do more with less now. So I don't expect drilling in the Eagle Ford to ramp up at all. That doesn't mean production won't increase. Like I said, we can do more now with less. But drilling is not going to ramp up anywhere. That's, you know, back in the day, we would have a big ramp up of drilling rigs during a period of high prices. Those days are pretty much gone. Those days are pretty much gone. We can drill and complete wells so fast now that you just don't need to pick up a bunch of drilling rigs to increase production anymore. Like those days, I'm not saying there won't be times where rig counts increase, but you're never going to see 1,000 rigs operating in the United States again. That's never going to happen again. And that happened as recently as the last Trump administration. You know, his high point was about 1,000. Obama's high point was about 2,000. But you're never going to see that 1,000 again. We're sitting here today at record production with 500 and something rigs running. Never again will we see 1,000 rigs in the United States. I don't think we'll see 800 again in the United States. We will see rig counts increase. I think when we see rig counts increase in the future, it'll be more targeted towards natural gas and not oil. So, and I know there's some gas in Eagle Ford, but the highest rig counts that we will see in the future are declining every year, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So Mr. Escobedo replied, we can complete 3 wells in 2.5 weeks, about 22,000 foot wells. Exactly. And, you know, when I was a 19-year-old kid working on a drilling rig, if you told me we were going to drill a 22,000 foot well, I would be so excited, because what that meant was that I had a job for another year, because that's how long it would take us to drill that well. It would take us about a year to drill a 22,000 foot well. And, you know, when I worked in drilling over 30 years ago, we were always wondering if we had another well to go to when we finished whichever one we're on. And the reason we were always wondering was because it took so long to drill wells back then that the entire market could change just in the time you were sitting over that hole. Like the entire, you know, and now you can go out and pop 3 wells in 2.5 weeks. The market's not going to change a whole lot in 2.5 weeks. Like, you know, but back in my day, you could start a well at $50 oil, and by the time you got done drilling it, oil could be 15, like, because it just took so long. So yeah. Gasoline profit at gas stations are slim, right? Do you know what the average markup normally is? I haven't spent a ton of time in the retail sector of the business, but I believe it's around 20 cents a gallon is around the average markup across the United States. Some places it's a little bit less, some places it's more. When you get into areas that have a very high cost of living and a high cost of doing business, the markup at the pump is significantly higher. So if you're in Los Angeles, who knows what that markup at the pump is? But and then if you live in more rural areas with low cost of living, the markup at the pump is very low, and they're focused on driving more traffic into the store itself to purchase the items on the shelves, because that's where they make their money. But I would say about 20 cents on a national average. Depends on location, exactly. Um, Jedi Ghost Bear, how big does a natural gas field need to be for it to be economically viable? I was fiddling on Washington DNR site, and I guess there's a field in Whatcom County that's 1 billion cubic feet that's unused. That's not enough, Jedi. 1 billion cubic feet is not enough. No. I have wells, just one well, right, that have produced over 1 billion cubic feet of gas over their life. 1 billion cubic feet is a very small amount for a field. So I don't, unless it's really shallow and someone can go in there and cheaply drill a well, super cheap, very shallow vertical well, and there's an easy way to get it to the market. I don't see anyone working in a field that only has 1 billion cubic feet of gas. 1 billion cubic feet is not a lot. It's really not. There are a lot of companies in the United States that produce over 1 billion cubic feet of gas every single day. So that's how much, you know, 1 billion cubic feet is. So Thank you so much, TikTok folks. Please like the live. Don't forget to gift moderator Jilly, who's been hanging with me now for quite some time. Jill, if you have something you need to do, you're not, I don't want to keep you here. Okay.
I was up here to tell you that and just, so I put it in the chat, but I'm good for the moment.
Okay. Well, I know it's been a long time and I don't want to keep you from what, it's a Sunday.
Right. I'm good with that.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
mhm.
And the Montney zone in Alberta, so much condensate comes up with natural gas that the economics are driven more by the price of condensate. Yeah, that's the case in a few basins. Do they run a lot of in that field? Is there a lot of like JT skids, a lot of D highs? Is there a lot of things like that in place to um, break out any of that stuff? You are like the Heather Cox Richardson of the oil business. Thank you. Well, thank you, Andrea. I don't know who that is. So I think it's thank you. I think it's thank you. Yeah. I should look her up. I will absolutely look her up. Absolutely. Looking her up now. Heather Cox Richardson is a national treasure and an amazing educator. Wow, pretty impressive. PhD from Harvard. Have to check out one of her books. Do you recommend one of these books, Andrea? Catch it on Audible. Oh, she's on Substack. I can follow her on Substack. Does natural gas come from animal or plant matter? Mostly plant. Yeah, 99.99% plant. Yeah, it's the whole dinosaur thing that, that's just marketing. It's plant life. Monty says Letters from an American. Is that a recommendation of one of her books? I'll check it out. How famous is she? I wonder if I could get her on my live. Have most oil companies diversified into renewable energy? A lot of the big ones have made investments into renewable. Shell, BP, Exxon, not so much. Not a ton of them, but I just shot an email to Anthony Davids and James Harrigan, who have the Words and Numbers podcast. Hopefully they invite you on. Well, thank you for that. I've never heard of that podcast, but I will check it out. Happy to do podcasts. I have a couple of interviews tomorrow in the morning. Will the McDonald's Filet-O-Fish save us before the end of the year? I don't know. I've never had a Filet-O-Fish. Getting fish from McDonald's never felt like a good idea to me. So, and it may be great, but not a thing that that I've ever explored. She likes doing lives with serious folks. Well, man, I'm gonna have to hit her up. So. Thank you so much, Jedi. I really appreciate that. Does TikTok know if you have someone impersonating you on TikTok? Yeah. I probably have about 150 someone's impersonating me on TikTok. Yeah. I can't get rid of them. Can I get rid of them? Thank you so much for the gifts. I'm a little more particular about my fish. That's just me, though. I mean, Jill is back. Back again. Are you on Substack? Yes, I am on Substack. Search for Mr. Global on Substack and you will find me. I don't have a huge presence there. I think I have around 5,000 or so followers. I haven't been there that long. Yeah, I don't even know what is that even fish? I don't know. I picture the fish at McDonald's kind of being like plywood. Plywood is a mixture of a bunch of crap glued together. And, when I think of fish at McDonald's, I think of plywood because it's probably a bunch of fish stuff just mashed together and molded together with some kind of something that holds it together. I don't know. You're getting followers from Mercado Media's Discord. Several of us have shared your videos and folks love them. Andrew Mercado and you would be a good live. Thank you so much, Kersey. Filet-O-Fish is fish flavored bologna. There you go. Came from Mr. Smarty Pants himself. And I believe Mr. Smarty Pants because we're in the same business. I can cook a good plywood. Don't diss it till you try it. Well, Jill, I bet you could, but I'd prefer your steak if you don't mind. Did you see the big news about how America might just ignore some of its debt? I did not see that, and that would be a pretty bad thing. Yeah, I don't think you can just ignore your debt. Um, I know I can't, and I know Mr. Smarty Pants can't, and I know Jill can't. I don't think America can either. Filet-O-Fish, had one today, smaller than the days gone by. Everything is smaller. Have you been to Canada often? I've been to Canada, I think 3 times in my life. So I wouldn't call that often, but I've been. Donald Trump suggests that Musk found irregularities in an effort at Treasury, and they may just not honor them. Okay, well, I'm not an economist and don't pretend to be, but I just feel like that can't be good for the stock market because, I, but I shouldn't talk about it. I don't know that much about it. Thank you so much for the gifts. Please like the live. Please gift the moderator. Wants to give them some meme coins to go away. Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, who do you decide not to pay? Probably Donald's own debt. That's a possibility. That's a possibility. Should diesel be cheaper than gas? So I get a lot of questions about diesel prices, and diesel used to be cheaper than gas, and the common answer that people give about why diesel is more expensive now than gas and it used to be cheaper. The common answer is ultra low sulfur diesel and having sulfur content at less than 15 parts per million, which they did back in, I think, 2007 ish, around there somewhere. It's when they started rolling all that out. And that does play a role, but not in the entire increase in diesel prices. So the best answer is that gasoline drives cars and diesel drives the economy, right? So, and keep in mind, you can only produce roughly half as much diesel out of a barrel of oil as you can gasoline. That's another thing. So a barrel of oil produces roughly, not exactly, but roughly twice as much gasoline as diesel. Diesel drives the economy though. So, your diesel demand is not just in diesel pickups and semi trucks. Diesel is an industrial fuel that is widely used across the economy. So as the economy expands, the need for diesel grows with it. And it is a purely, as diesel prices, continue over the long term to rise, it's just due to expansion of the economy and how much diesel we use in the industrial sectors, right? That is a huge driver of diesel prices alongside the ULSD. But, the ULSD probably maybe adds a nickel to a gallon of diesel. All the rest of that is demand, because diesel drives the economy, gasoline drives cars. Gonna have to do it live, eating a Filet-O-Fish now. Well, I mean, I could eat my first ever Filet-O-Fish on a live, I guess. I've eaten other things on lives for the entertainment of others. I don't know why I couldn't do that. But I'm I'm not going I'm not going to do anything with a Filet-O-Fish that I did with Reese's Cups. It's not going to be like that. So totally different thing. So I'm just going to eat it. If I do that, I'm just going to eat it. I'm not going to tongue punch it. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. So. I have to get over the psychological barrier I have with eating a Filet-O-Fish. Like, I'm real picky about fish. I just am. I will say the best salmon I've ever had was absolutely in Canada. Where was I at? I think I was in Victoria, but yeah. What about the McRib? Is the McRib still out? I think the McRib Barrister just called me the splashing champion. That's only because no one else is playing Barrister. That's the only reason I'm the champion. It's kind of like being a champion of anything else that no one else is doing. Kersey says it's just 3 bites. I don't know if the McRib is still out. I think that's one of those things that they still just roll out occasionally and they sell it for a while and then they quit. I'm not sure because I don't eat McRibs. I don't go to McDonald's. Not because I'm this beautiful picture of health. That's not the reason why. I just don't go to McDonald's. But I have had a couple of McRibs, but it was probably more than 20 years ago. It was probably like when they first came out ever. However long ago that was, that's probably when I had 1 or 2 of them. But and I don't remember being a big fan of them. I must not have been because I didn't eat any more. So I think I could manage a Filet-O-Fish though. I mean, if it was in the best interest of whatever. My favorite salmon was in the Needle in Seattle, steamed with butter and dill. The chef came out to tell me how he made it. You know, I almost ate there. I was there. When was I there? I was there not too long ago. It was this last summer. And the freaking line was so long to get into that place that we didn't stay to eat. So don't eat Filet-O-Fish. It's not supposed to come out of a Slurpee machine. I see. Mary understands. Filet-O-Fish isn't supposed to come out of a Slurpee machine. I agree. It's not supposed to come out of a plywood press either. You know what I mean? Fish is supposed to come out of a fish that came out of the ocean. I agree with Mary too. I'm a big fan of Mary now. Thank you for that, Mary. I don't think I've ever had a sawdust bun. Yeah, I'm a steak person. I'm a steak guy. Yeah, Navy said filet is a stretch. Is that even a filet? Like, cowboy cut. Are you talking about just like a bone-in ribeye? Is that what you're calling a cowboy cut? I am 2 super chats away from meeting my goal. Is there any meat in a McRib? There's no more meat in a McRib than there's fish in a fish fillet. That's my guess. There's no more meat in a McRib than there is in a quarter pounder either. If I eat a fast food hamburger, I go to a place called Brahms that we have here in Oklahoma, and they have their own farm. They raise all their own beef. They make all their own products. They have a massive farm where they make, it's like an upscale, little more upscale kind of country style fast food place. Very fresh, cooked to order, and they also have ice cream. And I'm pretty big on ice cream. So, hi Annette. Oklahoma girl here, love Brahms. We love Brahms too. Rock nerd Tiffany, who may or may not be a geologist based on her name, says Brahms is the best. Worked there for 3 years in high school. Brahms is the best. I would agree. 100%. Thank you so much for the gifts. Thank you so much. Gotta check something here. See, she is a geologist. Told you. Rock nerd Tiffany. I don't know if you follow me on TikTok or on YouTube. Did you see my video where I used scrub daddies to demonstrate permeability of rock? Did you see that? Because you're a geologist. So if you saw that, tell me what you think about it. Was it good? You're the geologist. I'm not. I'm like a rookie geologist. Like I have geologists on the payroll, but I'm not a seasoned, trained geologist. I just know about it, right? So yeah, so I think it's probably 4 or 5 videos back on my YouTube channel. I did a video where I demonstrated and taught people about permeability using 3 different scrub daddies that had 3 different, they were 3 different styles of scrub daddies. So as if you pretended they were a rock, they were different types of rock. And we talked about high perm, moderate perm, and low perm. We talked about porosity. We talked about fluid viscosity. We even talked about Darcy's and millidarcies and centipoise, which I don't know if you're an oil and gas geologist or another kind, but I prefer the scrub mommy. I haven't heard of that. Scrub mommy a thing? Is that a thing? Scott said he loved the Scrub Daddy video. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, someone asked me about, because there was some discussion about someone had worked in the Mediterranean on high perm wells, and someone asked me what that meant. And I was like, I was standing in my kitchen. I'm like, how can I demonstrate? Because if I can, I prefer to demonstrate how something works instead of trying to explain it, because people can get lost in the explanations because there's a lot of verbiage and lingo that they don't understand. And so I was just sitting there and I saw this Scrub Daddy in the sink, and I thought, and I looked under the sink and we had two more that were different kinds. And I was like, this is perfect. I can totally demonstrate this with Scrub Daddies. So you talked a while back about the new refinery in Oklahoma. What is the status? Is it online now? No, they haven't even started it. So that's a refinery in Oklahoma that they're trying to build that will run completely on renewable energy. And the land deal fell through. It's Southern Rock Energy Partners is the company that's trying to build it. And last update I got was they're still trying to figure out where to put it. And I went to Cushing last year and met with the city's economic development guy, like the economic development manager, whatever his title was. I met with him, and I met with the mayor, and I met with another lady there. I can't remember what she did. But anyway, he took me around the town. He showed me the massive tank farms that exist in Cushing, showed me where refineries used to be. If you're not aware, Cushing is the pipeline crossroads of the world. A lot of the pipelines in the United States meet in Cushing, south from there. So Mr. Smarty Pants said, so the refinery will only run 35% of the time. So they were actually, that's pretty funny. They're going to use geothermal, wind, solar. What was that other? They were going to use hydrogen because they can make it there. And there was something else. So they were going to use all these different kinds for that very reason you just stated. Because a refinery has to run. That, it has to run. It has to run 24 hours a day, right? And so probably some battery technology there as well. And that's honestly, that's why I was so fascinated about it, and I wanted to go kind of be a part of it. And I want to see this thing built. I want to see what it looks like. And another reason I'm a big fan of it is because it will only refine U.S. produced oil. I wanted to see that thing built. I wanted to see the progress of it, and I wanted to share it with people that follow me on the internet. So people always ask me about that refinery, and it's the same old story. It takes forever to build a refinery. Moment of silence. Roy D. Mercer's passing. I thought that guy was gone a long time ago. But Rock Nerd Tiffany says, I don't do oil and gas. I was more geomorphology and 3D modeling with LiDAR. Now I teach at college. Okay. So to give you an idea of how versed I am in geology, I only know about geology, how it applies to the oil and gas business. And I don't even know 3 of those words in your sentence. So. Why are we not at 150,000 likes? That's a good question. How much oil is left in the ground? A lot. A lot. If anybody tries to tell you how much oil is left in the ground, they're completely full of shit. What I can say is a very vague and, general term. There's a lot. There's a lot left in the ground. Yeah. It's not anything that we need to worry about, is what I mean. So. Is it difficult to extract oil from 3 to 7 miles deep? Regardless of the depth, and so there's multiple things that factor into the difficulty in extracting oil from any of those depths, because that 7-mile depth, many of those miles could be in a horizontal section of the well, which doesn't contribute to the difficulty of producing it. So the deeper a well is vertically, the more reservoir pressure you need for the oil to lift out of the well. How deep it is horizontally, other than, you could do some calculations, some friction modeling and things like that. It gets talking about turbulent flow and really shit that people really aren't that interested in. But so it's really the vertical depth that matters, because that is where your hydrostatic pressure point is calculated. And so as long as your reservoir can overcome the hydrostatic pressure of your well, which is all based on vertical depth, as long as it can overcome that, it can flow and be easily produced. If it can't, you have to use artificial lift to produce the oil. So. How much oil is needed to be profitable? That totally depends on how much you spend. It's like any other business. So there are literally wells in this country that can be profitable at 10,000 barrels of oil. There are. They're very shallow wells drilled with very small pole rigs, like in Kentucky, and it really depends on how much you spend. For a normal unconventional well nowadays, you probably need it to produce at least, I don't know how much. It would need to at least produce 50,000 barrels of oil, at least. Or no, 150,000 barrels, not 50. I was doing math in my head. And that's a low end. Like if they knew that well was going to produce 150,000 over its life, they wouldn't drill it to start with. So have I seen There Will Be Blood? Yeah, I've probably seen it about 50 times. It's one of my favorite movies as well. Yeah. that one movie is the reason that Daniel Day-Lewis is my favorite actor. So, all right, everyone. Well, I am way deep, 3.5 hours deep into this live, so I think I'm going to shut it down. I really appreciate everyone coming in and supporting me. Thanks, everyone, so much for the super chats. That's really generous of you. Thank you so much on TikTok for your gifts and for sharing those with moderator Jilly. Jilly, thank you so much for hanging in with me for 3.5 hours. This might be the longest live I've ever done. First live I've ever done. First dual live I've ever done. I'll probably do all my lives this way moving forward. But thank everyone so much for coming in. And I think we're probably going to be getting close to football stuff here pretty soon. So I don't expect to see much activity in these lives moving forward. What, Jilly?
I said, yep, it's coming, football time.
Yeah, football time's coming. It's a good time to shut it down. So thanks again, Jilly.
Thanks, everyone.
Good to see you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone, for coming in. I really appreciate it. See you soon.